Hi there, I'm Nancy from Black Sheep Knitting here in Needham, Massachusetts. We're right in the center of Needham, easy to get to, not far off 128. If you haven't been here, come by. We have an online store where we're adding new products all the time, very easy to do. So if you think of something you need on the weekend or you live far away, we ship pretty quickly and our shipping prices are pretty decent. So visit us online and have a ball. Today I'm going to talk to you about a favorite pastime of mine other than knitting, but it's something I do while I'm knitting. But before I do that, I wanted to show you, some of you may have seen that we advertised a workshop for the Douglas Cardi, which is Andrea Mowry's, one of her latest designs. She's quite prolific. And I saw this and decided this would be a great workshop. And it's a DK, she's done it in a DK weight, and there are a few options that you can do on it. It's kind of an oversized sweater. I'm doing it shorter because I saw some shorter versions that I liked, and hopefully mine won't be quite as loose, but it's a good, comfy sweater to hang around in. So I decided to do, it's a DK weight yarn, and I decided to do it in felted tweed. So this is the beginning of mine, and I have to say I started this less than a week ago, and I just loved, Robin's rolling her eyes at me as I'm saying that I started less than a week ago. The thing about this is I love the yarn, I love my needles, and I love the pattern. And when that happens to me, I just knit like crazy. And when I started, I don't usually love ribbing, but I started this and I couldn't stop. I just loved it. And so these are my colors, and these colors will continue. I've just begun with the black stripe, and then it will repeat these. Anyway, there's still room in the workshop. If anybody's interested, call the shop, and you can sign up online. It's online. So again, it's called the Douglas Cardi. And you don't have to make it this long. That's the beauty of knitting, is that you can change how things are. You can find a pattern. And in fact, these have pockets. I don't love pockets on my sweaters, so I'm leaving the pockets out. I'm not doing them, but you certainly can. And I would encourage anybody who does like pockets. These are an easy, it's called an afterthought pocket. And if you take the workshop, you'll learn how to do that. So that's that. And what I wanted to talk about is one of my favorite things to do is to watch video knitting podcasts. I've kind of run through a lot of stuff on Netflix and Amazon Prime, and I used to be a news hound, but I'm kind of sick of that. So one of the things that I discovered in the last couple of years are knitting podcasts, and there's some wonderful podcasters out there that I just love, and it's a great way to learn about knitting, to learn new techniques, to learn about what's out there in the knitting world, what people are doing, and also just to have fun with these great people who love to knit. So the first one I wanted to tell you about is Fruity Knitting, and it's F-R-U-I-T-Y, like the fruit. And it's a couple, although it was a husband and wife team, Andrew and Andrea. Sadly, Andrew died this past spring from a brain tumor. But the two of them started this a few years ago, and she's just a fountain of knowledge. She's an exquisite knitter. She figures things out, and if you watch it from their first podcast all the way up to the most recent ones, you will learn so much about knitting. And she just figures things out. She's very, very detail-oriented. She is a perfectionist, and she will happily rip back huge amounts of, even Fair Isle knitting. There's a fly flying around here, so if you see him, we're just going to keep going. So Andrew sadly passed away, and it's a very touching story. They have a daughter, Madeline, who is in the podcast from time to time. And so she's now working with Andrea, and they've restarted their podcasts. Andrew was in technology of some kind, science, something. And Andrea was a musician. She played and taught piano and voice. And they are a very enthusiastic couple. And Andrew began knitting. She taught him to knit. And he eventually quit his job and was doing this full time. So not only do they, does she talk about what she's knitting and what he's knitting, they visit artists around the world, either via Zoom or FaceTime. I'm not sure how they do it, but you get introduced to knitters, shepherds, all sorts of people who are involved in the knitting world. All the way to, there was one woman who taught knitting in a prison in Pennsylvania, and it took her 3 years to be able to get in to do it, and they interview her. They visit people all over. They also do videos with just other designers and just people who love to knit and do beautiful things. So if you want to be really inspired and if you want to learn a lot about knitting, I highly recommend them. They're on YouTube. You can start at episode 1 and go all the way through. I've actually, I'm at the point of doing a second round of watching them. Another one that, so I highly recommend that as my first choice. The second one that I recommend is called Grocery Girls. And these are two sisters who live in Edmonton, Alberta. They've been doing this for about 4 years. They're the most wonderful people. They are fun, they're slightly bawdy. One of the things I love about them, and I hope this is true outside of their videos, is they just seem to be wonderful, good friends. And they both love knitting. The younger of the two sisters, Jody, also makes bags, knitting bags, and she started dyeing yarn. They call themselves the Grocery Girls because their parents own an IGA grocery store, and they both work there doing various things. But mostly they knit and do this wonderful podcast that comes out about every other week. During COVID, they were doing it every week, so if you go back, you can really watch a lot of them. And they're just funny. They give away a lot of yarn. They get sent a lot of yarn and bags and all kinds of things from different makers from, around the world almost. So you'll also learn a lot about knitting from them. They just knit constantly. They do great things, and they design as well. So they've both got some, Jody does a lot of hats, and Tracy does a lot of socks. Anyway, I love them. It's just fun watching. You'll laugh. They cry sometimes, so you might cry just because they're just really heartfelt, wonderful women. And then another one that I like to watch is The Knitting Place. And The Knitting Place is two women in, I think it's Port Washington, New York. It's on Long Island, and the one owns the store, Dinah, and her friend who works there. And they just show a lot of things they're knitting on and new projects and things that are shown in their shop. So they're interesting. You'll see a lot of new stuff, lots of kits and lots of things to do. And then one of my newer favorites is one called Fleece and Harmony. Fleece, like sheep fleece. And they're two sisters from, they're from Canada. They are currently in Prince Edward Island. And they both had corporate jobs, one in Montreal and one in Toronto. And they and their husbands left their jobs and bought a sheep farm in Prince Edward Island. One of the husbands has since left, and I think there was a divorce, but they have a sheep farm and a mill, and they learned how to process wool, how to raise sheep. I think they got a grant from the government of Canada to do this, and they share, they have like a 2-family house, Victorian house, and then this farm, sheep farm. They've got chickens, rabbits, they've got 3 or 4 horses, and a lot of sheep, maybe 80 sheep. And so they process yarn from all around Prince Edward, Rhode Island, and other places. So they don't just process all of their yarn, but they sell quite a bit of it. They have a very active online store, and they have a shop there, and they are a huge Rowan. They're called I forget the name of it, but they sell almost exclusively Rowan yarns and their own yarns. The two of them, the younger of the 2 sisters, has stopped podcasting for a while. I think she's starting up a new company, but they begin together, and they have hilarious stories of what goes on and what has gone on their farm, and you just laugh. I find myself laughing out loud at some of the things that happen to them with their animals and in learning to raise these animals. So those are a couple of really good knitting ones, and I'll just quickly tell you about 2 others that if you want to just get away from the world, there's a one on Amazon Prime called, I think these are both on Amazon Prime, one called Gardner's World, and everybody who knows me knows I've been talking about this for weeks since I discovered it. And it's a program that was it on the BBC? I'm not sure, but it's in England, and it's a guy named Monty Don, and he lives on some kind of estate in, well, I don't know if I'd call it an estate, but he has a lot of property and magnificent gardens. And so he did this show. I think the show has been around for about 50 years, but he as the host has only been, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, I'm not sure. But if you want to see just exquisite, beautiful gardens and how to grow plants and how to propagate, how to transplant, just everything you would love to know about gardening. And what he grows is a lot of the same stuff of what we grow here. There are other people on the show, and they visit gardens around England, around the British Isles, which are beautiful. So if you want a peaceful, lovely thing to knit by, this is a great one. And then finally there are people coming in the shop, so don't be alarmed. There are people, there's another podcast called Clarkson's Farm, and it's a fellow named Jeremy Clarkson. And if you ever watched a show called Top Gear, he was the guy who drove around in all kinds of vehicles. Well, he's since bought a farm in the Cotswolds, or maybe he already owned it, and he decides he's going to become a farmer. And his escapades are hilarious. Again, it's just very entertaining, and it's a great thing to knit by watching this. And this one I have laughed out loud numerous times. So those are my recommendations, and I hope you'll come and see us next week. Want to remind you that the yarn crawl is happening on September 30th, going through the 3rd, so Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Our hours you can find online for the Greater Boston Yarn Crawl. So there's several shops to visit, lots of goings on at all the shops, and free goodies and prizes to win. So I hope you'll stop by. We also have more classes starting here in the shop. We have a couple of Zoom classes. We're going to be advertising those in an email, and we hope to get them online so that you can sign up online. The classes are here in person and 2 or 3 on Zoom. In the shop, we social distance, we wear masks, we insist that you be vaccinated. Masks are very important because people have been getting breakthroughs, so you don't want to walk around with your mask, and certainly you won't be able to come into the shop without a mask. So that's it for today, and we'll see you next week. Happy knitting. Bye.